Hi there everyone, welcome to today's live, and we're going to talk today about little owls, but yeah, weather report, it's just a bit grey, but a touch of spring in the air today, isn't there, Will? All the birds are singing out there, so yeah, it's a lovely day out there. It's very still, very quiet, so yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening out there today. The kestrels are busy, the barn owls are down in Elmston, and yeah, so there's going to be loads of stuff. And then this morning we've seen a glimpse of the kestrel that was bothering the little owls at Ashwood has actually gone into one of the nest boxes I finished yesterday, so really exciting. But today we're going to talk to you about these little guys, some of my little favourites. Little owl, this is a painting I did a few years ago of a little owl, and they are stunning. Just look at those cheeky little eyes, they're absolutely beautiful. So yeah, little owls is today's topic. And I'm going to start by showing you some of footage that I got last year. And this is a huge nest box that I made, which very nearly killed me getting it into position. So that's well over 6 feet long and more than twice of my weight. And we winched this up into a tree, and I was lucky enough to have some little owls nesting in there last year. And that took many years for those little owls to go into that nest site. Every year I was checking it and getting more and more disappointed after such a huge effort that nest box went in there. But last year they nested in there, and I got some incredible footage which we will hopefully make into a story one day and share with you. But this year I've put a new nest box up. I'd just forgotten how much I love little owls. They can be tricky little things to have just really local to us around here, because the Tawny owls can actually predate them and chase them off. So I've had to go a little further afield with this one up to Ashwood, where we've had little owls breeding there for a few years. So I'll show you how I go about this. This is the nest box. I've got my two strong lads here. I've got Will and Sam helping me lift this in. So this is, we made it look easy there. This is heavy. It's, I tried weighing it. It's about 140 kilos. This wood. It's 5.5 to 6 foot long. And then this is me starting to fashion it into a nest box. It's just a branch that's divided and has opened up. So I close off the back to make an actual nest box. And then this drops off to one side. So this is an old planter designed into a nest chamber. And then this is us actually winching it up into position. This is heavy, so it's actually been winched up by the car. So this is about 150 kilos. So you can see I'm not actually lifting that, I'm just guiding it into position here. And the idea is I use the ladder to slide it up there. We've got a winch point that's above the platform that I've put in where the nest is going to go, and that's always important. And then look at Sam there, he's flexing his muscles there, just pulling it round the branches for me there. Yeah, so nearly in position. So that was an idea of showing you how we get to the nest box into position, but before that there's a lot of work making that nest box suitable for the little owls and suitable for my cameras to go into. And then we had some really exciting stuff happen shortly after I put the nest box up. And this is a little owl. I think this is the male little owl, and he's going in and taking a look. There's very little to tell the difference in between the male and female, and I almost need to get them sat side by side to sort of tell the difference. And we're only sort of guessing at this stage which is the male and which is the female. But yeah, it's a super little view of it, just taking its first little peek in there. They're quite nosy little owls, so they will, if something new appears in their territory and there's a cavity in there, they will go and take a look. But we were really pleased. How long was it? Well, I can't remember. It wasn't long, was it, before I had a little...
A couple of days, maybe.
Yeah, just a few days after we fitted it, the little owl couldn't resist going and having a look in there, which is absolutely fabulous. And then we've got this is a branch outside the nest box. I've had some quite windy weather, so you can see his feathers getting ruffled. And this is it taking one of its first looks in daylight. And I left a couple of voles in there for it as a little treat, just to get it used to coming back and back to that nest box. And he's not obviously hungry, so he goes inside the tunnel and actually caches the nest in the tunnel. So there's a tunnel along the back of that nest box, which is about 2.5 feet before you drop down into a nesting chamber. So the little owl has a long tunnel. I can't get my hand or my arm down that tunnel, it is so thin. And that's how little owls like it, because they don't want anything else to be able to get into their nest. So when they're nesting, they want to feel really safe that a tawny owl can't get in, a barn owl. Jackdaws will struggle to get in there. A jackdaw would be able to get into there, but if there's a little owl in there, it's going to have a very unwelcome greeting. So little owls, for the size, like kestrels, they are proper feisty, and they punch well above their weight. They're full of attitude, full of character, and I absolutely love watching them. What are you going to hit us with, Will?
We have Friday's events.
Friday, yeah. Let's go for Friday's events. This is just having a little preen here, the little owl, and again I think this is the male. The male seems to prefer this nesting area to the female. So this branch would have been completely open at the back, and I've infilled it with wood there and created this little corridor. So this is the male. This is the first time he's going in to check the nesting chamber. He's having a good look around, and these little moments are absolutely magic to see, because this is the first time this bird has gone into this nesting area, and he's just sizing it all up, checking all the corners out, and you think, yeah, this is looking good. He's thinking this is looking suitable. I might show this to someone, he's thinking.
We were whooping and cheering, weren't we?
Yeah, this is very exciting. This is last thing on Friday night. We were still working beyond hours again, a bit late. And this sort of finished our week off perfectly, that the little owl went into that nest, and he looks quite pleased with himself there. So yeah, that was just a fabulous little moment. There he is, look, full of fun, full of character and mischief. I absolutely love them.
What have we got next? We've got this fight.
Oh yeah, so the kestrel soon caught on. This is a 2-year-old kestrel. Well, he will be 2 in the spring, and he's been in there, sitting in there. It's a lovely place to sit out of the wind, and then there's this long standoff in between the male kestrel and the male little owl, and he just dashes inside the nest, and he's still inside, and eventually the kestrel sort of leaves of his own accord. But that was a little standoff. If that had gone into fisticuffs, yeah, he's just checking he's gone, looking slightly cross. Yeah, but the kestrel flew up into the trees, and you could see the little owl sort of scowling at it after that. But that's just a great little moment there, where we've got a little bit of competition for that nest site. The kestrel really wouldn't be able to fit in there and actually drop down and do all of the turns. There's a little corridor in there, which makes it difficult for the longer-tailed species to actually fit down there. So a great little moment. What have we got next then, Will?
We've got a really exciting moment when we have 2
the guest that comes, yeah. So that's the male. He just bombed straight into the nest box. Now we think this one's the female. The differences in between them are very subtle. At first you think she's got a really defined white brow, but if you watch that brow carefully, that brow changes, really changes. It's, the feathers, and they can control all these feathers to do different expressions. So that white brow is sort of decreased sizably there. So she goes in and have a look, and he's just like, yeah, you get yourself in there, push her in. So you get in there and have a look, see what you think. It's just so funny watching them. Yeah, a little encouragement there, I would say. So there will be other sites these little owls are looking at, and we've literally just got to cross everything. She likes it, he likes it, because what they've got there, they've got their backs to the wind, so they're not getting any wind. And they're actually it's like a little front porch for them. It's all open. It's a covered porchway for them, and that lovely entrance hole there. And they seem to like that. They like little areas where they can sit and just literally take the world in, because they will be hunting throughout the day as well. If they see a beetle on the ground or a moth or a worm or anything like that, even a vole or a shrew, they'll literally just bob down and grab it any time during the day. So they generally hunt dusk and dawn quite often, and then throughout the day as well when they're feeding chicks. So when it gets into the dead of night, they don't hunt quite as much, because that's when tawnies and which is their main sort of danger and competitor, are out and about. So they will work different hours really when they're hunting. So super little bird. What's next? Is it questions?
Questions indeed.
Yeah, so we're going to take a few questions now.
So we have a question from Nathan B on Instagram. I would love to photograph little owls. How can I find them?
How can you find a little owl? So little owls are relatively common, but you've just got to find a nest site really, or somewhere where they're sort of habitating. There are setting up territories at the moment. So just keep scanning your local countryside. They do like parkland quite often. They don't go into dense woodland, for instance. They're on the fringes of woodland. And, they do crop up in really unusual areas as well, because they're trying to avoid bigger owls like the tawny owls. So they will be like an old farmstead in the middle of nowhere, derelict, and you could even have little owls nesting there in a rabbit hole, pile of bricks, in a chimney stack, so they will nest down at ground level as well. So, but they're a super little bird. They're not easy to get into nest boxes, I can tell you that, compared to the tawny owls and barn owls, which are ready to go into a nest box. You've got to get that design correct. If you can look in the hole and see the nest, you won't get a little owl nesting in there most likely. They like to be tucked away, hidden away.
So we have a question from Lynn Janes, who's a supporter on Facebook. Why do little owls stash their food in the entrance rather than the nest box itself? The kestrels are treating it as their free food bank.
Yeah, so some of the food I've put in there, but then they take the food in there and cache it away. And the kestrels are caching it further down in the corridor when they take it in. But they do cache it there rather than the nest, because it isn't really their nest yet, and even if it was their nest, they wouldn't cache it still most likely in the corridor leading to the nest, because they don't want to then soil the nest as they start nesting. They often have a cache away from the actual nest site, and all birds of prey will do that. From peregrines, they can cache, like urban peregrines will cache food in gutters and things which cause problems, and different parts of buildings. On wild peregrines will cache the food in little crevices in the cliffs, and the same with the kestrels. All these birds of prey, if they get a surplus of food, will cache it, and it's not always in the nest box. Unlike barn owls, they'll have the cache usually around the nest, but I have found barn owl caches behind stable doors in old buildings and things. So,
Next one we have is from Sue R. She's asking, are the little owls siblings or are they mates? And do they come in different sizes like these two?
Yeah, so they're not necessarily that different in size. It's the perspective of the camera. So if you imagine the hollows here that we're filming along, there's a nice hollow here, the camera's on an angle here, filming alongside the hollow, because the plan maybe is then to put a hide in that's filming them straight on. And if I put a static camera in my way when I'm filming, it's then in the way. So it's the static camera's put to one side on an angle. So the log's here and the camera's filming along at an angle. So those little owls are more or less the same size. The females are sometimes heavier, but it's not always the case.
And the other question was, are they siblings or were they mates?
No, they're mates. They're mates. So they bred up there last year, those little owls, in a natural hollow. And I'm hopefully provided something that's a little bit nicer than that. So time will tell.
How many eggs do they lay? And that comes from Anne Lucas on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll be good if we get 5 eggs out of little owls. So they will lay more than tawny owls, but not as much as a big brood of barn owls, for instance.
A question from a viewer on Instagram. What are your 3 favourite owl species besides the little owl?
Oh, if we're talking native, we've got to go for barn owl. Yeah, well, little owl's got to be in there. You can't not have little owl in there. The barn owl, little owl, and tawny owl for our local species here. But I've travelled around the world looking at, when I'm out in different countries, I always look at the owls there. And I've seen some spectacular owls out and about in the wild across the world, from little tiny Scops owls through to the bigger eagle owls. So yeah.
The London Calling asks, how little can a little owl be?
A little owl. We've got a ruler. They're about this. They're this little, which doesn't really tell you much, does it? I've got a ruler. So we're looking at 8 inches. Here we go.
Good.
Oh, I've got the wrong sized ruler. So they're 8 inches. This is 6 inches. So add 2 inches onto that. If they stand high and tall, so we're looking at 8 inches or 20 centimetres. Yeah.
Miss M asks, how much of a drop down is it to the nest chamber?
It's only about this far. So, it's only, a short distance that they drop down into the chamber.
When do you think that they may start nesting? And that comes from Shazza.
So little owls are similar to kestrels, that we expect them to start nesting properly at the end of this month or the beginning of April. They usually lay around about then.
We have a question here. Are little owls more endangered from predators by other owls because of their size? And that comes from Weasel Girl on YouTube. Yeah, definitely they are. Yeah, so we used to have little owls just at the bottom of the hill here, and I was just starting to put hides up and filming them, and I went one day and there was just a clump of feathers left and a little bit of little owl. So they can be predated by several species, so tawny owls, even crows, buzzards, sparrowhawks. So a predator has the habit of taking out another predator, whether it's a lion taking a cheetah or a tawny owl taking a little owl. But then if there's an eagle owl around, the eagle owl will eat them all. So so it's always this, whichever species you're looking at, there's always this hierarchical system within predators. So a stoat will take a weasel, but a bigger mustelid might take the stoat and the weasel out, like a pine marten. So it's all down to competition, really. Victoria B, one of our moderators, asks, are you placing hen chicks at Ashwood? We have seen both the little owls and kestrels with hen chicks. Yeah, I'm putting some out there to start off with, but I've got to start withdrawing them soon or finding somewhere else where I'll put them. So it's just before I had cameras on there, like yesterday, I had a temporary nest box in there and I was putting some chicks in there and I saw the chicks were disappearing, but it wasn't until we actually got the cameras on that we actually knew what was happening. So over the winter we had 9 days of heavy snow and very cold conditions down to -14, and a period of a week or 10 days, 2 weeks can actually just kill the little owls like that. They don't last beyond 2 weeks of really heavy, hard conditions like we had. So I have been feeding the little owls throughout the winter, but you're not always 100% sure unless you put in trail cameras and other cameras who's actually taking that food. So I've been quite careful because you can easily then start causing birds more problems. If a crow finds that food and gets used to going to that nest box for food, when they have eggs or chicks, you'll end up with a crow heading on in there, or jackdaws, and actually predating the chicks of the kestrels or little owls. So it's not a thing, it's a precise thing that I'm doing here, feeding them at the correct time of day and things. So, but that will have to change at some point. We've just, had some hard weather this winter in a way, a lot of wind, a lot of rain, a lot of snow. So, it's important to help these guys through. So we've just got time for a couple more questions. Mm-hmm. Bev Gibson asks, how can you tell the difference between the sound of a little owl and a tawny owl? Oh, a lot. Little owls, super little sounds. It's all on my phone there. But yeah, if you look up any of the sounds for little owls, they're just fabulous different calls. Quite charming calls. And hopefully we'll be able to bring you those as we start following this story through. Just heard little chittering noises at them so far, wickering, but the other night I was there and there were some beautiful calls in between the male and the female that were duetting together, and it's a completely different call to the tawny owls.
But the Tawny owl has a massive range of calls as well that they do, as do the little owls, and yeah.
So just time for one more question. Nicholas August asks, do you have prints of the little owl?
Yeah, we've got prints, little owls. This is one of them. We've got, I think, about 3 or 4 limited edition prints. Yeah, so that's one I painted a few years ago. But I'd no doubt there'll be some more pictures of little owls to come, because I just love them. They're absolutely fabulous.
So that's it for today. That's all the questions we've got time for. Thank you very much for sending them in.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week, and keep your fingers crossed.